You are closer than you think to walking away from something real. Not because it is weak, not because it is false, but because it touches a part of you that still does not know how to stay. This person cares for you in a way that goes deeper than comfort, deeper than attention, deeper than the easy kind of romance people talk about every day. And that is exactly why your chest feels tight, why your thoughts race, why part of you wants to move closer while another part wants to disappear. Stay with this. Because what feels confusing may actually be the clearest sign that something important is happening. Some connections do not enter your life softly. They shake the room inside you. They wake up old fears, old longings, old questions you thought were buried. And if you have ever felt like running from someone who feels too important, too close, too real, then listen carefully, because this is not just about love. It is about what love reveals. It is about what rises in you when another person sees more of you than you are used to showing. And before you decide this connection is too much, too intense, or too hard to hold, there is something you need to understand. What disturbs you is not always there to destroy you. Sometimes it comes to change you. And what you call anxiety may be the beginning of honesty. Do not skip this part, because the next few minutes may explain something you have felt for a long time but never had words for. Love is often imagined as something calm from the start, something gentle, safe, and immediately certain. But real connection does not always arrive that way. Sometimes it comes with pressure. Sometimes it brings a strange kind of inner noise. When someone truly matters, your normal balance gets interrupted. Not because the bond is wrong, but because it is deep enough to reach below your surface. Your mind starts asking questions. You analyze every message, every pause, every shift in tone. You doubt what you feel. You doubt what they feel. You try to control the meaning before it has had time to unfold. But that mental struggle is not always proof that the feeling is false. Many times, it is proof that the feeling is strong enough to challenge your usual patterns. Real affection touches parts of you that are not fully conscious. It stirs old pain, quiet fears, hidden hopes, and emotional habits formed long before this person arrived. So when they get close enough to touch those places, your reaction may not be peace. It may be tension. It may be confusion. It may even feel like danger. But look deeper. What if your inner world is not warning you that something is wrong? What if it is trying to process something meaningful? This is where many people turn away too soon. They mistake emotional movement for a red flag. They call depth instability. They call vulnerability a mistake. But not every uncomfortable feeling means stop. Sometimes it means pay attention. Sometimes it means your heart has entered a room your defenses have guarded for years, and now those defenses do not know what to do. This is why real love can feel unsettling. It does not only connect you to another person, it brings you face to face with yourself. It shows you the distance between what you say you want and what you actually allow. You may want closeness, yet pull back when it appears. You may say you want honesty, yet hide when you feel seen. You may long for peace, yet feel drawn to what wakes you up emotionally, because deep down, numbness has become too familiar. The disturbance comes from contradiction. One part of you wants to be held, another part wants to remain untouched. One side wants surrender, the other wants control. And when both sides become active at once, the result is emotional friction. A lot of people misread that friction and step away, believing they are protecting themselves from the wrong person. But often they are stepping away from a rare chance to grow. Because true affection does not just comfort, it exposes. It reveals what has been living under your habits. It shows where your needs are real, where your defenses are strong, where your fear still speaks louder than your trust. And if this connection keeps returning to your mind, if it keeps pulling your attention inward as much as outward, that is not random. Something in you recognizes that this bond carries weight. Maybe not easy weight, maybe not simple weight, but real weight. And here is the part most people miss. Intensity is information. It is not always harmony. It is not always compatibility. But it does mean something in you has been activated, and that activation deserves understanding before you make it into an exit. When someone truly cares for you, their presence can awaken layers of your inner world you did not know were still active. Beneath the surface of attraction, there is often a deeper exchange taking place. Old fears begin to move. Unspoken desires begin to rise. Hidden emotional memories start looking for language. You may feel a powerful need to be close to this person, and at the very same time feel an urge to protect yourself from them. That push and pull does not always mean you are confused about who they are. It may mean you are finally becoming aware of what has been living inside you all along. Love, in its genuine form, does not invent your fears. It reveals them. It does not create your unmet needs from nothing. It shines light on them. Fears of rejection, vulnerability, loss, or losing control become louder when the stakes feel higher. And when someone offers steady care, deeper desires also come alive. The desire to be accepted without performing. The desire to be chosen without chasing. The desire to feel emotionally safe without pretending to need nothing. This creates tension because one part of you starts moving toward what you always wanted, while another part tries to keep you protected in the old way. And that is why this kind of connection can feel like both relief and pressure at once. It is not random. The person who stirs these reactions often reflects parts of yourself you have not fully welcomed. They become a mirror, not a perfect one, not an easy one, but a powerful one. And when you are suddenly confronted with your unmet needs and learned defenses in the same moment, no wonder your emotions feel hard to manage. Emotional intensity is often mistaken for instability, but many times it simply points to psychological importance. When a connection creates strong excitement, longing, anxiety, hope, fear, or even irritation, it usually is not a shallow thing. The inner world does not release that much energy for no reason. Something in you recognizes meaning before your rational mind can explain it. That is why your attention keeps returning to the person, not only because you like them, but because your mind is trying to understand what their presence has awakened. Still, this is where clarity matters. Intensity does not automatically mean the relationship is healthy or lasting. It means it matters. It means there is material inside you asking to be seen. Past emotional wounds, old expectations, unfinished stories, and private needs can all gather around one connection and make it feel larger than life. That is why these bonds can seem consuming. Your thoughts circle back again and again. Small interactions feel huge. Silence feels loaded. Presence feels magnetic. Absence feels louder than it should. If you have felt that, do not rush to label yourself dramatic. There may be a real reason your inner world is responding so strongly, but do not rush to worship the intensity either. Stay grounded. Watch what it is showing you. The emotional charge itself is a message. It points toward where you are vulnerable, where you are invested, and where something unresolved may be asking for attention. This is important, so keep listening. If you only try to escape the feeling, you may miss the truth hidden inside it. And the truth is often not just about them. It is also about you, about what you fear, what you need, and what you still have not made peace with. Real love does not simply validate the identity you already built. It puts pressure on it. It pushes against the version of yourself that was shaped for survival and asks whether that version is still serving your life. Maybe you learned to be independent because depending on others once hurt too much. Maybe you became guarded because openness was not handled gently in the past. Maybe you built an image of being self-contained, strong, untouchable, because needing anyone felt dangerous. Then someone arrives who does not only respond to the part of you that performs well, they sense the deeper parts too, the softer parts, the uncertain parts, the parts that want connection more than they want control. And suddenly your self-image starts to shake. This is why real love can feel destabilizing. It challenges the stories you tell yourself in order to feel safe. It reveals needs you may have judged as weakness. It exposes how often control has replaced honesty. It asks you to become larger than the role you have been playing. That can feel threatening, because identity creates stability, even when it is limited. When love asks you to expand, the first reaction is often resistance. You may think the relationship is wrong when what is really happening is that your inner structure is being asked to grow. The person who truly cares for you becomes a kind of catalyst. Their presence invites a fuller version of you to emerge, one that includes strength and softness, confidence and openness, certainty and surrender. That does not happen in a single moment. It happens through discomfort, through reflection, through repeated choices to stay honest when running would feel easier. And yes, sometimes that process feels like chaos before it feels like clarity. The fear of losing someone often begins before anything is actually lost. Once a person becomes emotionally important, the mind starts imagining their absence even while they are still there. It rehearses separation. It predicts distance. It scans for signs that something is slipping. This is how anxiety enters the bond and starts coloring perception. A delayed reply feels like rejection. A slight change in tone feels like withdrawal. A busy day feels like fading interest. And slowly, fear begins to sound like truth. But that fear is not always reading reality. Many times it is a defense system trying to prepare you for pain before pain has even arrived. The mind would rather expect loss than be surprised by it. So it creates stories. It runs quiet simulations of disappointment, distance, betrayal, disconnection. Not because these things are happening, but because emotional value has become so high that your system wants protection in advance. The hard part is that these imagined threats can feel just as real in the body as actual ones. Your chest tightens, your thoughts spiral, your mood shifts, and if you are not careful, you begin reacting not to what is happening, but to what you fear could happen. This is how strong bonds can start feeling unstable from the inside, even when they are still intact. And the more meaningful the connection becomes, the stronger this loop can get. Attachment deepens, fear deepens with it, sensitivity increases, reactivity grows. But listen closely, fear is not always proof that the relationship is fragile. Often it is proof that the relationship matters. It shows that the bond has touched your emotional security. The task is not to obey that fear. The task is to understand it before it starts making decisions for you. Another force that shapes deep attraction is projection. In the beginning, we rarely see another person fully as they are. We see them partly, and then the mind fills in the rest. It uses old memories, hidden wishes, unmet needs, and private fantasies to complete the picture. This happens quietly. You may believe you are responding only to the person in front of you, but often you are also responding to what they represent inside you. They may seem like safety. They may seem like rescue. They may seem like emotional home, or transformation, or the answer to an ache you have carried for years. That symbolic weight can make early attachment feel stronger than reality alone can explain. The person becomes a screen for your inner world. You project hope onto them, meaning onto them, sometimes even pain onto them. And then the emotional charge grows larger, not just because of who they are, but because of what your psyche has placed upon them. This is why the early phase of a meaningful connection can feel almost unreal in its intensity. But eventually reality becomes clearer. Their actual personality starts to emerge. Their limits show. Their differences appear. And that is when tension often begins. The image in your mind collides with the real human being in front of you. If you are unaware of projection, this moment can feel like the magic is dying. But sometimes the magic is simply changing form. It is moving from fantasy into truth. And while that can feel disappointing at first, it can also become more real, more stable, and more honest. Projection is not always a problem. It can be a bridge. It can show you what your inner life has been seeking. But if you never recognize it, you may keep relating to your own unmet needs instead of to the actual person who is trying to meet you. Relationships often act like mirrors. They reflect not only your affection, but also your unresolved inner conflicts. You may crave closeness and fear dependency at the same time. You may want to be fully seen and still hide the parts of you that feel hardest to love. You may desire honesty but panic when honesty removes your emotional armor. These contradictions can exist quietly for years, but intimacy pulls them into the open. Once another person becomes emotionally significant, reactions start carrying more than the present moment. Anxiety, idealization, irritation, jealousy, numbness, withdrawal, overthinking, sudden doubt, even the urge to create distance can all be expressions of inner conflict being activated. This is why relationships feel so revealing. They turn abstract emotional tension into lived experience. What once stayed hidden inside your private thoughts now shows up in your body, your behavior, your timing, your silence, and your choices. And that exposure can feel destabilizing. It breaks the illusion that you are entirely consistent within yourself. But this is not pointless pain. It creates a chance for awareness. Every emotional reaction becomes information. Every trigger points somewhere. Every moment of discomfort asks a quiet question. What part of you is asking to be understood here? This is the deeper value of meaningful connection. It does not only give companionship, it brings unconscious material to the surface where it can finally be recognized. And if you keep avoiding that process, the same patterns often repeat with different faces. Different person, same fear. Different story, same escape. That is why running too early may feel like relief, but still leave you carrying the same unresolved weight into the next bond, and the next, and the next. Avoidance is often misunderstood as lack of feeling, but very often it is the opposite. People distance themselves not because nothing is there, but because too much is there. When a bond starts to matter, vulnerability rises with it. The more emotionally invested you become, the more you risk being affected by rejection, disappointment, or loss. To reduce that risk, the mind creates distance. Sometimes that distance looks obvious. Sometimes it is subtle. It can appear as slower replies, emotional withdrawal, overthinking, sudden criticism, a sharp focus on flaws, or the quiet belief that maybe it is better not to need anyone too much. These moves can seem logical on the surface, but underneath them, there is often fear. Fear of being seen, fear of losing control, fear of repeating old pain. For people who have known inconsistency, emotional confusion, or abandonment, genuine closeness can feel less like comfort and more like exposure. The system remembers what hurt before and tries to prevent it from happening again. So even when a connection is meaningful, safety may be chosen over intimacy, and that creates a painful paradox. Stepping back may lower the immediate pressure, but it can also create emptiness, confusion, and regret because something important is being held at a distance. This is why avoidance is not always rejection. Sometimes it is a struggle with the force of one's own emotional response. One part says stay, another says protect yourself now. One part says this matters, another says it matters too much. If you have ever sabotaged something you secretly wanted, this may be why. Not because the bond lacked value, but because your system lacked space for that much emotional truth all at once. And here is the turning point. What feels overwhelming can become manageable when it is understood instead of automatically obeyed. Growth inside relationships is rarely comfortable. It does not happen only in moments of ease. It happens when discomfort rises and you choose awareness instead of reflex. It happens when jealousy shows up and you ask what it is protecting. When fear of abandonment appears and you stay present long enough to hear what it is saying. When the urge to run takes over and instead of calling it intuition too quickly, you pause and look deeper. This does not mean you should ignore real incompatibility, disrespect, or harm. It means not every hard feeling is a signal to leave. Some hard feelings are signals that your old emotional structure is being challenged by a new experience. And if you stay conscious, that challenge can become transformation. Growth asks you to observe your reactions instead of becoming them. It asks you to stop treating every wave of emotion like a final truth. It asks you to become curious about your fear rather than controlled by it. This is subtle work, slow work, but powerful work. Each time you remain present instead of escaping, your capacity for depth increases. Each time you name what you feel instead of acting it out blindly, your inner world becomes more integrated. Over time, what once felt unbearable becomes more understandable. What once felt threatening becomes more workable. This is how emotional maturity grows, not by never being triggered, but by learning how to meet what gets triggered with honesty and steadiness. Stay with this, because this may be the part that changes everything. The relationship in front of you may not only be asking whether you can love another person, it may be asking whether you can remain present with yourself while love is happening. The psyche moves toward wholeness through connection. Another person can bring out emotions, desires, strengths, and wounds that would have remained hidden in isolation. Through love, you begin to meet parts of yourself that were pushed aside, undeveloped, or never fully accepted. Maybe you discover tenderness where you only valued strength. Maybe you find a deep need for reassurance beneath your image of independence. Maybe you realize that what you admired intensely in another person points to a quality waiting to grow inside you too. This is why powerful bonds can feel life-changing. They do not just add someone to your world, they rearrange your sense of self. They reveal what has been missing, what has been buried, and what is ready to be integrated. Wholeness does not mean becoming perfect. It means becoming less divided inside. It means allowing different parts of yourself to exist without forcing one to destroy the other. Strength and softness, boundaries and openness, desire and discernment, hope and realism. Through real emotional contact, these opposites can begin to coexist. And yes, that process can feel messy before it feels meaningful. But it is still movement, it is still development, it is still development. Every strong reaction becomes a doorway if you are willing to enter it with awareness. Every emotionally loaded moment holds the possibility of insight. This is why letting go too fast can interrupt more than a relationship. It can interrupt understanding. It can cut off clarity before it fully forms. Sometimes what feels overwhelming at first becomes clear only with time, reflection, and lived experience. So do not mistake the first wave for the whole ocean. Let the process speak longer than your fear. Let the bond show you what it really is before you decide its meaning. Because sometimes the connection you are tempted to leave is the very place where your next version is trying to begin.